just accepting more participants to join us for this exciting event. Today's webinar aims to introduce to the businesses the importance of Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau, its operating model and the credit score, as well as how to improve the credit score of businesses and entrepreneurs. This webinar is proudly organized by Abu Dhabi Chamber and Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau. My name is Surur Sawan, the International Affairs Specialist at Abu Dhabi Chamber, and it's my great pleasure to MC today's webinar. I hope we are receiving more participants. As we move on, we will be accepting more. If you have any questions, please save them to the Q&A session, and we will answer them at the end. Now I would like to welcome our speaker, our key speaker, His Excellency Marwan Lutfi, Chief Executive Officer of AECB, the Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau, to present us an overview of the services of the special organization in the UAE. Your Excellency, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Everyone, I see there's a lot of attendees, and we're thankful for this collaboration that we're doing with Abu Dhabi Chamber for giving us the opportunity to explain to the audience what the Ittihad Credit Bureau is. Many of you might have heard of the credit reports or credit scores, which is something that we will cover a little bit later in the presentation. I will give you a little bit of insight on who Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau is, what have we achieved over the past decade, and then we'll get into a little bit of details where every company and individual should actually know what their credit report looks like, what their credit score is, and how it will impact them. And that session, I'll move to one of my team members to actually discuss in more details. We'll aim to complete this presentation in less than half an hour, so at least we can leave a lot of room for questions and answers. So if I may start, whoever is controlling the presentation, if we can start on the next slide, please. So Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau, we were set up as a federally owned company. Our structure is a company. We have a board of directors and we have our own funding. And the law for credit information was passed in 2010, specifically. In 2012 when the company was formed. In 2014, the bylaws that actually explain the more details of the law itself on how the company should operate was actually published in 2014. In November 2014 is when we launched officially our services. We started with only a single credit report that was issued for companies and for individuals. What is a credit report? We'll get into more details later on, but in summary, it's an aggregation of all your payment obligations put in one simple report. So we collect data from several sources that actually provide this data, and this data is really put in a report where it shows you your payment behavior against your payment obligations. In 2015, the regulations of the central bank were issued. We are a company that is regulated by the central bank, which means central bank sets the rules on who is actually and on how we deal with data specifically as a company, and for also the data users of these credit reports. In 2016, we launched a set of new value-added products which are geared towards the subscribers, specifically those that are heavy users of our services and products. So these are a little bit more focusing on how you bulk manage your portfolio and how you sign up for additional services. And then in 2017, we launched the credit score. The credit score is a score from 300 to 900 that indicates how likely you are to miss a payment in the next 12 months. In 2017, we launched analytical reports, which is an advanced report that we can issue for data providers to compare their data against market data. In 2018, we launched our digital channels. We started our offices with physical locations in Abu Dhabi as our headquarters and Dubai as our operational center. So we have two customer service centers in both Emirates. In 2018, December specifically, after a month or so from launching the digital channels, and that individuals were able to buy credit reports through our app or website, 80% of all the purchases have switched over to online channels versus the customer centers. And customer centers were just reserved for generally companies at that time and people who want to follow up with issues around the credit report and score. In 2019, we launched several different scores that are used by the subscribers of Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau services and products. And later on, after a decade of experience, we've actually amended the law in 2020, which included several different expansions of scope of the company, definition of the credit information being deepened further, and most importantly, lifting the restriction on requiring a consent to review any credit score and any credit score or indicator that the company issues. And that resulted in us launching specifically in February this year the product of what we call check score, and later on down the year what we'll see is the tenant score. So that is in a nutshell what Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau is, what we have achieved, where do we stand in the past 10 years. Next slide, please. So in general, what do we do? Today, our mission is to offer an array of data and technology-driven products so that users can actually make better and more informed decisions. So in summary, we collect data from various sources. You can see the sources on the left. We started off with banks, but then of course we started integrating with the telcos. So we have ندوة and اتصالات that provide data to Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau. We're connected with the central bank check clearing system, and then Abu Dhabi distribution company, Al Ain distribution company, and several other entities such as Ras Al Khaimah courts, Dubai courts, and are actually being added. The data that they provide to us are generally data linked to any form of payment obligation that you may have. So if you have a payment obligation against a court case, then that will be captured with us. If you have a payment obligation against your Abu Dhabi distribution company, then that will be captured with us, on top, of course, the usual credit facilities and any telecom contracts that you may have. We collect this data on a daily basis, anywhere between daily and monthly, depending on the type of the data. We store it, and then we formulate it into several different products that, as you can see, are issued in forms of the basic credit reports and scores, and some other more advanced products. And the users of this data, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, are actually individual and users, whether they're companies or individuals, through our online and website channels, or at the same time, subscribers have direct access where they can integrate their systems and pull our information and data in a real-time manner. Next slide, please. Over the past several years, this chart shows the trend of basically the usage of Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau products. And again, we focus mainly on the credit report and credit score here. So the adoption has been fantastic over the 3 years from the date we launched. We were able to achieve 100% adoption within the banks. So today, as you may be aware, whenever you apply for a credit card or a credit facility, whether you're an individual or company, every single inquiry or application is actually going to be checked through Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau, because today our database covers 13 million individuals and companies in the UAE, has more than 24 million credit facilities and contracts represented. We capture all IBANs, including salary information for individuals. And as you said, we can see that there's generally over 6 million products being checked every year through Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau. And these are our products that are, as we said, credit scores, credit reports, and other products. So today we are essential to the banking sector. We became essential to the telco sector. So today, if you have also are applying for a telephone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone on installments, then most likely ندوة and اتصالات will be checking your credit scores and your eligibility to see how many phones and what sort of installments you're entitled to and what sort of installments you can actually afford. And as we grow and get into deeper sectors, the usage of Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau's products are becoming more and more essential going forward. Next slide, please. To summarize how we operate in a 100% digital environment. So our data providers, subscribers, or direct customers connect with us digitally through various means. And we do offer basically a top class and environment where we're compliant with most of the international standards and the highest local standards as well when it comes to NISA. But at the same time, we do operate in a paperless environment and a cashless environment. So this is just in a nutshell to tell you that we do operate in an entirely digital format. And the final slide is a little bit more about where we started. We started, as I said, in 2015. On this chart, you'll see that, you know, as we grow, there becomes more sophistication in what we do as a data and analytics company. We start with one product, which is the credit report 2015, with one sector being penetrated, which is mainly the financial sector. The financial sector has been now, as I said, integrated with Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau. And as we grow further, we're actually going towards a top right trajectory on this slide, which means as we continue, our products are going to get more sophisticated. There will be more sectors using us, and we benchmark ourselves against some of the global players within the credit information services environment. Regionally, the top players are iScore from Egypt, SEMA from Saudi Arabia, who have started a long time before we did. And we are today basically surpassed some of them, and we're close to the others that are actually offering similar services and products that we do. But our aim is to really become a world-class credit information services provider in the UAE and maybe beyond eventually in the future. But most importantly, how can we benchmark ourselves against the top global players who are listed here on top: TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, who are the major players in the credit information services. On the right side, you'll see what we have achieved as a traditional credit bureau: the basics of facilitating access to finance, promoting credit and awareness, and increasing sector penetration, and where we want to become. And with the data that we have, we are truly becoming a data insights powerhouse that actually will offer a lot of value. And you can see today, we'll touch upon some of the value that eventually we'll be adding when it comes to dealing in check transactions in the SME sector. So this is in a nutshell where Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau started from and where we are at right now and where we're heading in the future. On the next slide, and I'll start the handover to my team here specifically. What we do have is a collection of almost 12 products in our portfolio right now from one single product specifically. And again, as you can see, there are several products that might be gray highlighted here because they're a little bit more relevant to subscribers who actually subscribe to our services. What we will focus on specifically today is the credit report, the credit score, and the check score. We leave questions for later, so I'd like to hand over to our head of business development, Mr. Daniel Eidevali, to actually walk you through some of these basically features of these products and how these products are actually used and how they impact you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It was great seeing the presentations of AECB, and now I would like to invite Daniel Labore, Head of Business at AECB.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, first of all the audience for attending. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you to our CEO, Mr. Marwan, for the introduction with a lot of insight. I think super valuable insight for our audience. So as we just mentioned, I will just walk you through a bit more of details of what is the credit score, what is the credit report, how to obtain it, also how to improve basically our own or our company's SME's score, and also some more additional information on the check score, which has been the latest product we launched specifically also to support SMEs in a daily business. So Khulud, we can move to the next slide. Let's jump into it. Okay, this first slide, it's a bit more about the credit report. So the credit report is technically the core of our products, and it's the main document that all banks, as we just said before, review whenever we apply for credit. So whether we apply as an individual or on behalf of our company as an SME, we give the consent to the bank to pull the credit report from Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau. And this is exactly what our bank sees. So it's extremely important also that we know the content of this report, not only because it's our credit standing, so we should get it for ourselves and check it time by time, but also because that's exactly what banks see about us, about our SMEs, whenever we apply for credit. So we have some pictures here on the some illustration on the screen. This is exactly how it looks like. You can go on our website. There are some sample if you want more details. But in a nutshell, we can start from the left. The first thing we see in our credit report is our demographic information as submitted to AECB by our information providers, so banks, telecommunication companies, and our credit score. We'll get to the credit score in a second in the next slide. There are a lot of information like also addresses, contacts, and also the list of our bounce checks. So whenever we issue a check, again, as an individual or as a company, and this check bounces, we need to know that these checks, the bounce checks, are logged into our credit report for 5 years. But the core of the report, we go to the second out of these three screenshots and pages. It's really a summary of our payment behaviors in the last few years. So basically, all the payment that we missed or delayed, also the credit application that we addressed and open to banks. So if we apply for credit recently, and in a nutshell, I consolidated the history of the latest 2 years of payments. But then if you go on the third and right of these 3 pages, the body of the reports can be even many pages depending on how many credit facilities we have or we had in the past 5 years. It's really for each credit facility, the history of the payments. So details on whether this is a credit card loan, an SME loan, or a mortgage. We see for the past 24 months whether the repayments have been done on time. So, and you will see this as a green, or with some sort of delays up to 30, 60 days. You will see this as an amber or orange color. Or if it was technically a default according to international standards on more than 90 days of delays, or according to the UAE Central Bank definition of default, more than 180 days of delay. So all these things are recorded, and it's very visible that banks, very clear that banks wants to know this information when they assess our application for credit. So as and why and in which way this report is used. We mentioned abundantly, obviously banks use it to assess credit application, but we also mentioned before, now telecommunication company, they assess our credit score mainly, but in some cases, especially for SMEs, also the credit report, before they grant us, let's say, payment on installment of our devices. But also this is probably, we see this getting more and more frequently also here in UAE. It's a very standard practice internationally. It's used also between normal business. So, and also especially for SMEs, sometimes to check and do a due diligence on a business partner, or also to assess the credit worthiness of a business partner. So we ask the report, and the report, the other party can share it with us. To understand also which kind of payment terms we can grant to these business partners. Let's say I'm selling any good or service to a specific company, and I want to understand even if I want to request for upfront payment or give 30, 60, or even 90 days of payment terms. In order to do so, in order to take this decision, many businesses request for the credit report to the other parties, review the credit report. If there is no sign of delinquency, payments were all fine in the last 2 years, they grant even 90 days of payment. If the credit report of this company shows current delinquency even, so some extreme cases, then some companies prefer to request for upfront payment. At the end of the day, it's the decision of who is selling the good or the service, but it's very, very important to have all the elements to take an informed decision about this. Social support applications, we have government entities, also social support entities also here in UAE, who get the report to understand which kind of subsidy or support or eligibility for support that these programs are availing to, for example, UAE National. And I think defined B2B payment terms we just mentioned. I think these are the main reason, but what I would like to invite you, really, any entity who is issuing or selling any type of good on services, it should be interesting check the credit report of the other parties. Let's go to the next slide, and I've tried not to take too much time, so maybe I go a bit faster on this one, but the credit score is basically the second of our core products. So it's while the report is a document by itself, there are a lot of information within it, a lot of data points. It takes some time also to review. The credit score is really one single three-digit number. It goes from 300 to 900, and where 300 is the worst, let's say, 900 is the best. And this number represents the likelihood of an individual or a company to miss payments in the next 12 months. So the credit report tells us a bit more of the past and the present in terms of credit standing. The credit score is just one number, and it gives us an outlook of the future. It gives us the likelihood on this, again, individual or company to miss payment in the future. Again, how is this used? Of course, it's used more or less for the same reason, assess credit risk of applicant. Obviously, a bank wants to know what's our likelihood to default if they give us credit. Again, telcos would like to know if we are likely to pay on time or miss installment or our iPhone if we went for it on an installment plan. Insurance company actually check the score. Again, they want to understand if they are going to miss payments for the claim, especially for corporate insurance. Some insurance company here in UAE are starting, it's very common worldwide, they use the score also to define the pricing of a policy. But let's say this is more of a sophisticated use case that they use from within the insurance market. And again, many other application. I would mention one specifically because it's a big thing starting now also in UAE. Buy now, pay later, or BNPL providers, they use the credit score. You may have noticed today when you go to almost any providers, Amazon, IKEA, through Tabby, you can now decide to pay a TV either upfront or you can pay it on installment. Okay, Noon also is implementing the same. So this is something very, very common now. It's becoming more and more a reality, a commodity in e-commerce platforms. So these providers usually use and check the credit score of the applicant to understand which kind of payment terms, if you are eligible for an installment plan. Sometimes the score could be very good, so the provider can give us more installment, like 12 installments, maybe at zero interest rate. Or the applicant can be already a defaulter, so in this case may not be eligible for a buy now, pay later, so no installment plan, you can only pay upfront. So there is a lot of adoption. You will see more and more of this also coming in UAE. We have been in discussion with many of these providers, and we also see that really the adoption of the score is becoming a commodity nowadays. Cool, the next slide. I think that probably one of the questions you may have right now in your mind is, okay, but how can I get my own credit score and my own credit report? I want to check it, right? So it depends whether we want to check our own as an individual or our SME, our company score. So if you want to check your own score for you as an individual, super easy. You can download the AECB credit report app from the App Store. Basically, you just scan your Emirates ID, the data are fetched automatically, and then basically you are shortly you can also log with UAE Pass, and you can just check and select your credit report. You pay with your credit card, and you just have to register one. Then the next time it's just a one-click purchase, and then your credit report is delivered to your email address. You can also do this from the AECB website. You can just log in, register, again, enter the information about the Emirates ID, and the report is delivered to your email. It's an instant process, so you don't have to wait. It's just click the button, perform the payment, and you get it immediately on your mailbox. For companies, there is a process through our website. So basically, you can apply. There is a form. Obviously, there are more information to add to submit. Technically, you need to upload your trade license, for example. And then there is basically a process behind. There is our team who checks that the requester is authorized to get the report for this company. But usually in one working day, this is completed. And then again, you get the credit report and score on the email address that you indicated in the application form. This is how basically we can get our own report, again, either for ourselves as an individual or for our SMEs. But obviously, there is also a way for you as SMEs to subscribe as corporate subscribers to AECB. like banks, for example, they are our subscribers, so that you can get access to our system and you can check the credit report and score on your business partners or your clients with the same reasons that we mentioned before. Obviously, in this case, so the credit report, let's say for individuals is again is available to also through our app, so it's even more convenient to do. So Khulud, we can switch to the next slide. Okay, I think this slide is also quite important because again, whether we are taking the report for us, the score for us, or checking the score for our SMEs, we receive a lot of questions. So you may not be familiar with the concept of the score. So what if our score is not as good as we expected? Maybe it's a 3-star or 2-star or even 1-star. I think it's important to know that there are main 3-4 factors, let's say 4 factors that contribute to the score. And so if you look at this factor, it's also quite straightforward to understand how to improve it. The first one, of course, it's avoiding bounce checks. If a check bounces under our record, then this impacts negatively the credit score. So first thing is avoid bouncing any further check, and then with time the credit score will increase. The second point you read here is as important as the first one. Obviously, always make payment on or even before the due dates. Again, if we miss payment, this is reflected in our credit report and impacts negatively our score. So as soon as possible, try to settle the overdue amount and try to keep any further payment done and paid on time. In this way, with time, the score will increase. The third point is also very important. Try to reduce the number of credit lines that we have. Sometimes also ourselves as individuals, we have many credit cards. Some of them we may not use it. We need to understand that all this credit, even if it's or credit lines, even if unutilized, they contribute to our negatively to our credit score. So the recommendation is always basically simply close the credit card, for example, if we do not use it. The fourth point is also important to mention. So it's important to try to reduce the outstanding balances and card limit utilization, or avoid maximize the limit of our credit cards or of overdrafts. So it's always a good practice to try to settle payments ahead of the due date. Yeah, next slide. Thank you, Khulud. I think it's a good practice to check up our own credit reports. I would say at least once per year, if not more. Also because sometimes I have to say this doesn't happen so frequently in UAE, but sometimes it can happen. But there may be some incorrect information in the report. Again, the data quality that we have in UAE is extremely good, thanks also to the fantastic collaboration that we had with banks mainly in the last few years. But still, sometimes error may happen in a very, very small percentage of cases. But if this happens, it's very important to spot it ahead of time and request AECB to support you with the data correction. There is a page, aecb.gov.au/correction. You can go, you can file a request for data correction, and you don't have to go to the banks, how basically that was the case a few years ago, but now you don't have to go there and basically try to navigate through the bank bureaucracy. We take care of it as AECB. There is our team that basically receive your request, and then we have already a communication channel with all the banks and finance companies in UAE and telecommunication companies in case there is any inaccurate information from Duer Etisalat, and we basically take care of the follow-up. Ultimately, they need to correct, but we also expose to them very modern technologies. They have websites or API that can correct the data instantly. So they need to verify your request. And I would say in all of the cases, if there is an error, they are very reactive and they fix it on the spot. Khulud, also next slide. Okay, I think this slide is very important. I'll give you a bit more of information on the check score. I'll try to go a bit quickly on this one, but it's important because it's the latest product, as we mentioned before, that we developed and launched recently as AECB, and it's also aimed to support a lot SMEs. So what is this score? What does it do? This score actually predicts the likelihood of a check to bounce in the next 9 months. And there is especially within SMEs, a lot of payments, maybe majority of payments in UAE is done through post-dated checks. And probably you have been in this moment of sort of anxiety, receiving a check and asking yourself, okay, is it going to clear or bounce? So we know this has been a challenge, and sometimes a big amount, a check with a big amount bouncing may really put an SME in a uncomfortable cash flow situation. So it can really generate a lot of issues and problems. So with this product, it's technically a mobile app, or you can do it also from the website, as you can see from this infographic. You just take the check, and before deciding whether to accept it or not as a form of payment, you can scan it with your mobile app. You can add and type in some information. And our database will basically get all the information related to the check issuer from our database, all the other checks that they issued, the information of the specific check. And we will give the percentage, whether it's a low, medium, or high, of this check to bounce in the next 9 months. You will also receive a report, a PDF report on your email, which looks like the one on the right, with additional information like percentage of checks bounced by the same issuer in the last 12 months, or both in terms of number of check and in amount, to give also an idea on whether this issuer have already or has the habit of bouncing check or not, and also a list of any court cases that we usually receive from this moment RAC court and Dubai court, but there are all the other courts that eventually will come to our database, which is a very good indication of something that you would like also to know about the issuer when you decide which form of payment terms basically to accept. This, I would say, it's the only way in UAE right now to assess the risk of a check before, ahead of time, right? And we have seen now a huge, incredible adoption since we did a sort of production testing last year, and now it's live. We see many companies now using it really recurrently. There are a few companies that now it's very visible. They do, this is part of their daily business. And every time they receive a check, they check the check score. They're developing their own processes, whether to request for different form of payments if the probability of bounce is high, or to just clear it and accept it if the probability is low or even medium. At the end of the day, it's a credit risk management decision of every individual company. So, but it's important for us to give them the element and the visibility to do so. I think, Khulud, this was the last slide, but I would like to mention maybe the prices of check score specifically. So check score, if you take it from using our mobile app or the website, is 10 dirhams. But as a subscriber, if you become our corporate subscriber because you want to connect directly to our system, you can get access to our web portal or to our APIs, even to automatically integrate your system with ours and do this in a real-time fashion, linked with your core systems in your own company. It can go down to 1 dirham. There are some volume discount mechanism. You can pre-purchase package of a fixed number of inquiries, and the highest is the higher is the number of inquiries you purchase up front, the lower is the unit price. So 10 dirham, it's one, even through the app. But as a subscriber, if you purchase bundle of check score altogether, it can go down to 1 dirham. I didn't mention the prices for the credit report before for a company, but if you buy it online, it's 150 dirham. As a subscriber, if you buy and check it for your business partners or for others, it starts from 50, but again, there are volume discount mechanisms, so it can go down to 40 dirham. I would say it's pretty much it. So I think you see our last slide. Usually we like to end with this statement. So make an informed decision, because really this is all what AECB is about. We are not here to make a decision on your behalf, but really our mission is to provide you with data and objective information so that you can take the right decision based on factual data and the information that we collect from our information provider.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been really great joining this presentation and learning more about your services. We're moving on to the question and answer session. We have a few questions that you might have passed by through the presentation. The first one was someone has applied for the score, but it wasn't calculated. The score check cannot be calculated. I'm not sure. It might be an IT issue, or in the presentation you mentioned that there is a link that they can register their complaint or issue.
Yeah, I think I can try to take this. I mean, I'll first address the question directly to our generic credit score and then also on check score. But in general, each score is the result of a calculation of an algorithm that starts from some data, some information, which technically is the information that you have on your credit report. So let's say, in general, if you have a credit history in UAE, both in terms of credit or checks, then our system is able to generate this 3-digit number. If there is no credit history, then there is a different for companies and SMEs. Then most likely there will not be the possibility to calculate this credit score. So there has to be a bit of history of basically credit before. But for individual, that was the case before. But now recently we launched an enhancement of our credit score. And now our system is able to calculate this 3-digit number for basically virtually almost everyone, 95+% of the people. Why? Because even if we do not have a credit history, we have some other sort of footprint. We probably have a mobile phone with Duor Salat, so we have an history of telco bills, or maybe we have an apartment, we have been paying utilities bill for water and electricity, or we received or issued checks which may have been cleared or bounced, or we may have, let's say, information in court with raccord to by court. So we put together all this additional information, and thanks to this other information, our basically database, our system is able to generate the 3-digit number. For check score is, I would say, very much similar. So if there is this minimum amount of information, the check score can be calculated. But there might be some extreme cases in which, like, the issuer is totally new to UAE, and maybe it's the first check that he or she issues. So in this case, it might not be possible because we don't have any data whatsoever on the issuer to do an assessment and the likelihood of this check to bounce in future.
Okay. Just to add to Mr. Danieli here, so timing is extremely important. What Danieli is referring to something we went to the press today as well, the enhancement of the credit score. So if you had checked the person reporting or mentioning this incident, it's very important to know when this credit score was checked. So if you checked it maybe 1 or 2 months ago, then you might want to check again. And if you don't get a result, then it's most likely that you don't have any credit history within the credit bureau. But most likely, I would say a majority, 90+%, are actually not going to be captured, and they will be issued with a credit score.
Thank you. Moving on to another question. If a subsidiary company of a group of companies applies for the credit score, will their score be affected by the group of companies or the mother company?
So if I may, I can take this one. So basically, is our system for when it comes to companies basically looks at the trade license. So you can imagine as a trade license number as a unique ID. So basically, if the company has its own trade license, then its credit history, it's within this company. So let's say if there is another company who owns this company 100%, so the second one is a subsidiary of the first one. As far as they have different trade licenses, they may have different credit score technically.
Okay, and we have a directed question to His Excellency Marwan Lutfi from Hassan Al-Khoury. He's asking if AECB has any plans to enter African countries. Not sure if this is related.
I think, look, at this stage, Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau is mainly focused on elevating the economic sustainability and social sustainability of the country itself. I cannot exclude this from the future, but at this stage, I think there's so much that we need to achieve in the UAE specifically before looking into
that. Another question is that if someone has a loan and they cleared it, do they still need to get a clearance certificate from the bank?
Look, I would say this is very much, sometimes banks themselves, they ask for clearance certificate. So this is more of a banking business. What we can tell you about this is if the loan is cleared and the banks report the data correctly, then technically within few days, this should be reflected into the credit report. So it's there, it's logged. Any banks who check your report will see it as closed. So whether the bank, in addition to the credit report, also wants to request the applicant for a clearance letter or not, this is really pretty much a decision for the bank. But the information is there in the credit report.
Okay, and can companies check customers' credit score?
Yeah, I mean, subscribers of AECB technically can check credit scores of their basically clients, customers, or business partners. If you are not a subscriber of AECB, you can request the other person to share their own credit score with you. The other person can simply go to our app, purchase their own score, and there is a possibility through the app or the website to add additional email recipients, so that this person will have to add your email as an additional recipient, so that you will receive his or her credit score directly on your email mailbox from an aecb.gov.au mailbox. So it's a certified, basically, submission of an email.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to address, I saw one of these questions as well. What is a good credit score range, and can I access it? I think it's very important. Today, Al-Ittihad Credit Bureau can offer a subscription service. Subscription service, of course, comes when you have volume. So if you have, a few hundreds or thousands, then generally it might not be economical, because there's so much preparation that goes into linking with us, integrating with us directly. And hence we generally recommend a lot of the companies that give finance facilities or give products on consignment, and expecting in the future to actually embed it within their credit applications, where we see a lot of trade companies start saying, in order to apply for basically some sort of credit, if you're a distributor or a wholesaler, I think then normally you need to attach a credit report or a credit score with it, or send it to us via this email, so on. So, and that's exactly what Daniele was saying, is you can apply online right now, and you get it online, and you can have the ability to send it as an authenticated as well score or report from these tools as well. And I think that is a very much different we've seen as well, even in government entities right now. So government entities, they don't necessarily have to subscribe with us, but they actually put it as conditions in tender acceptance, for example. So you see a lot of government entities right now to say, if you're applying for a tender or a bid, in that case, then you must have a minimum score of X, or you must have included your credit report. And that touches upon, again, the risk appetite, which is one of the people attending mentioned, what's a good credit score. A credit score is a technical term. It's an indicator that actually shows you, at very different tranches what your risk is. Now, normally advanced institutions will use this into their risk monitoring and calculation methodologies. For the layman person or company, what we've introduced is a 5-star mechanism in credit scores. And 5 stars really just tell you like how you're used to seeing in a hotel business. When you're 5-star, you're fantastic. When you're 4-star, you're great. When you're 3 stars, you're at the average, and 2 and 1 stars similarly. And these actually are shown in different ranges. So whatever that number is, you'll always have a star rating reflected against it. But it's not about how good or bad. It's about who is the counterparty dealing with you and how they will perceive this. Because some entities might have a much bigger risk appetite. So even if you're a 3-star, you still get all of the facilities, but you might get different pricing. And similarly, if you have someone who has a very low risk appetite, might set rules where say, I don't want to deal anyone with less than 5-star ratings, because their risk appetite. So we do not control as a company what decisions are made, but we help to put it out there, so at least that entity that is using it can make a more informed decision. You're on mute, I think, Jonathan.
Your subscribers, how can they be subscribers? Are they selected?
Daniel, you can walk through the subscriber onboarding. Daniel, you're on mute also.
Thank you. Yes, so absolutely. There is the simplest way just to send an email to subscription@aecb.gov.au. We can probably also send the reference of our basically the person who is heading the subscriber management team, Brian Gambin, who is also in this meeting. So we can circulate these contacts. But yes, there is a sort of due diligence process. There is a set of documents that our team will list down to submit and prepare to AECB. And then basically there is an agreement that technically needs a subscription agreement that needs to be signed between the subscriber and the AECB. And after all basically these formalities are sorted out and the subscription agreement is signed, then there are some technical connectivity activities to be done. And once this is completed, basically the subscriber gets access to our web portal. And even more importantly, to our APIs. So they can then connect their own system automatically with the AECB system, and then everything can be, let's say, automated and integrated.
So subscribers can be individuals, companies, because when you mentioned when you answered about the credit score, you mentioned that subscribers can actually access other individuals. So as a subscriber, are they like finance companies? Are they law firms? Are they banks?
Look, first off, yes, subscribers can access other people reports and scores. And who are subscribers? Mainly, let's say majority, all the banks and finance companies in UAE are our subscribers. Why? Because when we apply for credit, they check our credit report and score. Telcos do and Etisalat are our subscribers. When we ask for an iPhone on an installment plan or any device on an installment plan, they check our score. But there are many other companies, for example, car rental or car leasing companies. I would say almost all the big names now in UAE, they're all our subscribers. Why? When we go and apply for a leasing, something that implies a monthly installment, they want to check our creditworthiness to understand if we are going to pay every month for the car we lease. And we have some other corporates or government entities, as we mentioned before, for support authorities, or like simply corporates who wants to check the creditworthiness of their clients so that they can define the payment terms, upfront payment versus 30 days, 60 or 90 days if the credit score or report is very good. So yes, these are, so I would say anyone can apply, but of course there is then a due diligence procedure, and there is a process to basically achieve the onboarding.
Okay.
If I may, I saw, I think a question which was quite relevant, well spotted. There is a Hamad who is asking basically for how long the information are retained in the report and for how long the information are used in the score. So as I mentioned, the credit report contains information up to 5 years ago. The score, it's usually look at a slightly more recent history, and it looks at the last 24 months, so the last 2 years of history.
Another question is, what does plus VE means at credit report at a monthly chart? Is this something that can be answered, or is it clear?
I'm not sure exactly what it's referring to, so maybe I think yes, I can see it from Mustafa. So I think, Mustafa, you can feel free to write even to myself, Brian, or the audience. I think if it's something you saw on your report directly, you can also feel free to share the report with us. We can support you in assessing it. I think we have in the meeting also the person who is heading our customer experience department, Hani. So we'll definitely contact you to give you more explanation. Now, on top of my mind, I cannot basically localize this visually on the report. I don't know if Ani has any insight, but absolutely send us an email or contact us. We'll take it offline.
Okay. If a company accounts are frozen due to ongoing legislations or civil lawsuits, will AECB reflect the same?
Very valid question. I'll take care of this one with the courts. Today, the Credit Information Law really states that any payment obligation needs to be reflected. So we chose with all of the courts, the local courts and the federal courts, when we integrate with them, to only basically show any judgments that have been fully executed are actually in force. So if there's an ongoing case, then generally these things would not basically be reflected in the reports.
I hope this answers Daniel's question. And moving on to more questions, can we request for correction if there's a check bounce?
Yeah, I can take this one. I think I saw also another similar question. So in general, yes, if there is if you see a check marked as bounced in your report and you know that this check did not bounce whatsoever, then you can raise a correction request. Even though I saw another question that was asking if the person could request the correction if the check bounced between two accounts belonging to the same company. This actually, we take information as AECB from directly the clearing system or the central bank system. So I would say whether it doesn't really matter who the accounts belongs to, whether in the same company or the same person, but if the check is registered in the central bank database as bounce, then we take it as it is from the central bank and it appears as bounce in the credit report. So in that case, if it really bounced, then there is no correction to be done because actually the data is correct and reflects basically the database of the clearing system.
What's the subscription cost with the subscribers?
So there are, it depends. It can technically, if the subscriber can also decide to, in certain cases, to submit data, so to become a data provider for AECB. So in that case, is 10,000 dirham per year. Otherwise, normally it's 40,000 dirham per year.
Okay. And another question for the subscription cost, ID clients is not part of AECB. How is it possible? If the ID of the client is not part of AECB, how can they actually update their information or link it to their ID?
Technically, you need, if it's an individual, you need the Emirates ID to get the credit report and score. And if it's a company, you need a trade license. So I would say without, it's not possible to get the score or the report. Or when it comes to the check, you need the check, the information of the check. You can take a picture of it through the app, or technically you need the code which is written on the check, the name of the issuer. So these are the basic information that you need to get a score or a report.
Okay. Another question about checks is before submitting a check, can they actually check with AECB to see whether this check is going to be bounced or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the system, the product is thought and engineered to give people the possibility to check it before it's before the due date, technically. So absolutely, it can check whether you can check it even if it's your own check, right? You are signing it, you are giving it to someone else. You want to check just to be sure what the other person see because you know that they are going to check your check score. So it's also possible. You can scan your own check and get the likelihood of it to bounce.
I'm confident that most of our participants are going to be downloading the application as soon as this webinar is over.
We're reaching the end. So can I just do a quick fire on some of these questions because I think some some questions are actually interesting and we only have a couple of minutes left. So one person, if you don't mind, can I take the lead for this?
Please.
So one person says basically the presenter mentioned the bounce checks retained for 5 years is an individual score reset every 5 years, and score is calculated dynamically on the spot. So whenever you request a score, it changes depending on the information there. So basically, it's not a static score. So anytime you get an update on a daily basis, you miss a payment, you pay on time, it's actually dynamic. So you could check your score today, it will be a number. You could just check the score tomorrow, it will be a different number. So it's actually live, and hence why scoring becomes very important in monitoring basically your credit. And if something changes significantly, then it's something attributed to the content in your report. The second question I see from Sanjay as well, quickly, whether it's bounce, is AECB linked with Civil India? So I think it's a very important topic, how we connect with as the UAE is an open country as well, with more than 200 nationalities, and then we have been in the past 3 years discussing several legalities around how we basically work with our foreign credit bureaus and collecting information. I think this year you will see some sort of start to having some sort of integration on collection and exchange of credit information. At this stage, it's only one way, pulling information from abroad into the UAE so that users in the UAE can benefit out of it. Going forward, it will be sending out, which means for all expats that are living here, even the law allows us to actually export that credit information to their home countries whenever they move back as well. So I think this is a very significant change that we've been working on for 3 years, and hopefully you'll see something starting this year. Daniele, feel free to jump in. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else I want to pick up, because I said you have a lot of information. And when it comes to subscriptions, I think there's a lot of interest in who can subscribe. We have a very clear onboarding process, but generally companies subscribe to us, not individuals. As an individual, you cannot subscribe with us. But if you have interest, I've asked the team as well to paste here some contact details of the subscriber management team. So at least you have an email and a telephone number where you can reach the team and actually follow up with some questions on this matter.
Yeah, I would say there was just one question related to, I think it's quite relevant, again, about checks. I think we had a lot of customers raising the same question. I think it's basically more about a check bouncing. Let's say I issue a check for a payment to a service provider. This check bounce, but then maybe on the same day or after day, I settle the payment through other means, either cash or through a bank transfer. And usually our customers, basically people just ask us, so in this case, can I ask to remove the bounce check record from my credit report? Unfortunately, this is not possible. Why? Because as we explained before, at the end of the day, we take the information directly from the clearing system. So at the moment the check is presented to a bank and it bounces, it doesn't matter whether then the payment is settled later on through any other means or not, but the information that the check bounced at that moment is logged technically for 5 years on our credit report. That's the reason I personally hate checks, because you need to, also as an individual, you need to remember, especially post-dated, that on that day there has to be sufficient funds in that account. Fortunately now with the partial payments, the situation can be smoothed a bit, but still, even if it's a partial bounce, still it's considered as a bounce check. So unfortunately, in a nutshell, even if the payment is settled later on through other means, still the check bounce remain 5 years on the report.
Just to wrap up as well, some questions on data corrections as well. Bounce checks is a process that we've agreed with the central bank. If it's a valid mistaken bounce check, then it can be removed. However, just to state also, someone just mentioned at the bottom that actually it's someone's just cashing in the check just to destroy someone's credit score. We'd like to think that this is not something that happens regularly. However, if someone or an entity, there's a data provider that does actually wrongfully enter this information, there's a very clear process on data correction. If the data correction is submitted, there's a clear timeline on when this response comes from the data provider. And if there's a conflict, there's also ways how to deal with this if there's the both parties are actually conflicted. Now, in our history, and we have to be saying we're very proud, we believe that we have 98% plus accuracy on our database, and we have not had a single incident that actually led to a dispute. It's always one side always basically is right, and we've helped mediate a lot of these issues, and nothing. It's clear when it comes to data. It's really binary. It's black or white. It's 1 or 0. And in these things, that's what we try to be very accurate. But if you do have some incidents like this, you see the contact details of the team there as well. Please feel free, and they will guide you to do this, or submit it online to our data correction request, and we'll deal with it accordingly. I have to excuse myself to the esteemed members, and thank you very much for the audience for joining. For the chamber to invite us as well. If the team has more time, they can stay up as well.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Yeah,
it was a great pleasure hosting you all. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you to all our participants. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit AECB's website. And for more events of Abu Dhabi Chamber, please visit our website as well at abudhabichamber.ae. And we look forward to welcoming you more to our events. All the best to all, and thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.